okay, so we can keep this on time. Probably take a little bit over a half hour, maybe 45 minutes, depending on some questions. If you have questions, it'll be a little longer. So I expect a lot of questions. My name's Alan Peepoy. I'm the Director of Risk Management with the Policing Agency, and we're your insurance broker. One of the services that we provide are safety training, claims management, risk financing. We get involved with the workers' compensation policies and things of that nature. And what we've been asked to do is to conduct a hazard communications training program session. It's also kind of synonymous with Right to Know. Right to Know, they're kind of used interchangeably. Right to Know is more of a state statute type of regulation. And hazard communications is more of a federal OSHA type of regulation. They go hand in hand. We base ours off of hazard communications and OSHA, although school districts aren't really governed by OSHA regulations. You're looked at as a municipality type of organization, so it doesn't really apply. But there are best practices, and those are the kind of safe practices we like to follow. Everyone, if you haven't signed in yet, there's a sign-in sheet. Please do so. If you haven't, you can do afterwards. But does everybody have 2 handouts? Okay. Essentially, they're going to be the same thing as it's on the screen. So it's just a matter to have that information at your hand at some other time. Back in '83, hazard communications was first started by the government, and then later on, the Right to Know came about with the states. But they do follow the same process. And the idea is that it's a requirement for manufacturers, producers of chemicals, and suppliers of chemicals to make it mandatory that they prepare information sheets and make them available to every employee in the workforce. And that information is intended to make, describe the hazards that are associated with these type of chemicals and their uses, and gives you all of the safe handling practices as well, and what to do in case of emergencies. Now, I'm not going to pretend to say that I know how to handle every chemical that you have in the workplace. In the maintenance department, the cleaning products, and in the food industry. Things that are even in the office setting. Whiteout, a toner for copiers. Those things are literally covered by hazard communications and Right to Know, because there are some, issues dealing with those types of chemicals. And we'll talk about that a little bit. To what degree do you really have to really have that information available? So the biggest thing at the end of the day, the message to get across, is that this information should be in the workplace, and that if you're not familiar with what is going on and what chemical you're using, you should ask for that information. The biggest thing is to know that it's available and to say, I need that information, and you should be able to go to your supervisor and they should be able to provide it. Suppliers of chemicals are required to provide that information every time they provide you a shipment. If a new chemical comes into the workplace, you really shouldn't use that chemical until you have that information available and on hand, because an employee has to have it readily available. Okay? So, the key components to a hazard communication program, and I would be surprised if you actually have a written document that says this is what we do. Should you? Yeah, technically you should. The biggest thing, though, at the end of the day, what we want to get across is that you know that it's there, and ask. That's the biggest thing. Ask. The supervisor is the one who should know the job that you're doing and be able to interpret and read through that material safety data sheet and educate the employee on what the issues are. Okay, so first you should have a written program, technically. And it should address labeling. You can't have a chemical or a container in the workplace without knowing what's in it. In the maintenance department, you might have some cans, unless there's gas cans. Is it labeled gas cans or not? Is there kerosene in it? It might be used for something else. Sometimes you never know what's in there. You have to be extremely careful about what's in those in these various containers throughout the workplace. So labeling is critical. Materials inventory. You should actually have a list of every chemical that's in the workplace, literally A to Z. Whenever one chemical is no longer used, it should be taken off the list. You add in the new one. So you have at least some place to start to know what's happening or what's going on and what is literally in the workplace. Material safety data sheets. This is the backbone of a hazardous communication program. This is where you literally find the information on any given chemical, compound, whatever it might be, solution. It tells you what it is. If it's Clorox, it's going to tell you what the ingredients are. It's going to tell you the safe practices, the problems you may have with it, the types of personal protective equipment you may be required to use. Some people say, well, you just have to use rubber gloves. Rubber gloves aren't technically, aren't always the right personal protective equipment. Some things, some chemicals could be a solvent for that, and you have to have a certain type of protective glove. And that's where you'll find that information in training. Training to get everybody here, such as we are today, to go over the technicalities of the requirements of the items that you should be aware of. Okay? The written program has to be made available to all employees. It outlines your procedures. It outlines where the information is maintained, how do I get it, who do I ask. Basically, it's going to give you the policies and procedures of the organization to say, this is what you do to get this information. Okay? It contains a chemical inventory list. In the general industry, this type of information is required to be maintained for 30 years on record. Okay? That means, in this type of environment, that's not a requirement, but that tells you how serious they are about it, because they're worried about they want to be able to track down exposures to certain chemicals over that length of period whenever employees could have been exposed 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's still a way to go and find that information, and that's why they want you to keep all this information. And it provides information on how to read the labels, material safety data sheets, etc. Okay? Labeling. All containers have to be labeled. Okay? The best practice is that you can, sometimes you get in situations where you buy a 55-gallon drum of whatever, and you want to cut the top of a milk jug off and take a little bit out and use it for an immediate job. Is that acceptable? It is for the immediate use. For that moment in time, it is. You have to dispose of it, though, thereafter. What's wrong is that people leave it, and then the next shift comes in, or another employee comes along, and they don't know what happens to be in that container. So for job-specific, per day, per day, it's okay. But you can't leave it out, okay? You have to return it back to the original container or dispose of it, whatever you need to do. If you don't, you have to then label that container with something of similar or like labeling that you got from the main 55-gallon drum. What is it? What are the hazards? So the best practice is try to minimize the use of those unlabeled containers that are out there. I mean, whenever you go back out in your workplace, you should probably go and do kind of an inspection or an inventory and see what's there that you don't use. Dispose of it. Get rid of it. This stuff is just going to be lying around, and it's really just poor housekeeping is really what it comes down to. The best practice is try to get rid of it. Try to maintain that process where it's absolutely just not done. Labels must contain the product name. You just can't say it's a label and say it's Clorox. There's a minimum amount of information that's required. What is it? Product name. Warning statements and what the messages are. The manufacturer, the name, and the address of the manufacturer. But whenever you look at a label, you'll also see, typically, if it's a commercial grade product, you're going to see all kinds of information, much more than this. This, though, is acceptable for a temporary, like a portable container. Okay, if you made your own label up, literally you could get fill this room up with 55-gallon drums, no labels on any of them, and up above it you could say the manufacturer name and what the problem is, what the issue might be, what the hazard might be, and that would be acceptable. Okay, but you still have to have the material safety data sheet somewhere that gives you all the technical data that's going to tell you all the little minute information that it's more like a chemistry class than anything else. Okay. Commercial labels, they should be on every product that you have. Every supplier that comes in here should provide you with the material safety data sheet before they bring it out. Now, you'll also get a lot of situations, and companies will come out and they'll want you to try their product, test it. You literally should not use that until you have the material safety data sheet. Okay, so that's kind of a habit you have to get into. You have to ask that question. Is it available? And a lot of this stuff you'll say, well, yeah, that's just a cleaner. It's like a Windex, or it's like a disinfectant, or something of that nature. You don't think or place a significant amount of concern on those types of issues. And you'll say, well, what if I do use Windex in the workplace? Does that mean I have to have a material safety data sheet for Windex? Well, there's some exceptions, and one of the items one of the handouts I gave you is the exception. And consumer products that are purchased in that you can use in a home setting aren't covered. However, if you use those types of chemicals in an industrial or a work environment where it's not normal household use, then it is covered. So you have to go through this decision process. Like, is it, if you use 1 bottle of Windex per month, that's probably okay. But if you start to get it to the point where your job requires you to continually use those, and you go through 2 a week, 1 a day, that's not normal. Now you're getting a higher dose or exposure to whatever's in that chemical. Now, is that chemical in Windex really that hazardous? Probably not. We do that all the time. But just as an example, that's probably one of the things that we all use. Clean our car, clean our windows, and we use it for a ton of different things. Okay. So commercial labels are required at the end of the day. Okay. Things that you'll see on labels, the hazards. And these are the types of symbols you'll see. Is it a health problem? Is it a flammability? How well does it catch fire? Does it explode? Does it react with other chemicals? Whenever you get something in the maintenance department and you put it in your flammables storage cabinet, or you put it beside something that, if they're not kept in those actual containers, the vapors might react with each other. I don't know. But that's the kind of information you need to be worried about. Okay, and protective equipment, personal protective equipment, goggles, gloves, face shield, breathing, respiratory. Okay, flammability, you'll see things such as, it's a degree of 1 to 4. Something that won't burn to something that is extremely explosive and flammable. Okay, again, these are just examples of each category that you'll see on a material safety data sheet. Okay, but it's just to give you an idea of the information that is out there and available. And it's available for all different types of products and chemicals. There's actually websites you can go to, materialsafetydatasheet.com, and you can search names, and it'll give you all of the manufacturer's names, the chemical name, and then the generic name. Clorox is chlorine, but Clorox isn't really a chemical, it's a name, it's a generic. We all associate with that. Okay. Labels also will contain whether they're stable, explosive, unstable, and what chemicals that, if it's unstable or explosive, items that will be incompatible with it. Okay, so you're aware of those things. Continuing on, special hazards, oxidizers, corrosive acid, things of this nature. I mean, you get into water treatment, pools. Do we have pools in the school district? Is there? No pools? Okay. Material safety data sheets. This is the backbone, and it's usually 2 pages. And it's going to start off with the manufacturer, and it's going to tell you the chemical name, what it goes by, the generic names. It's going to tell you, the chemical formula. Most importantly, it's going to tell you the safe practices and what the hazards are that you can expect. Okay, so does it produce fumes? Do I have to have a special respirator? A lot of times people will say, well, it's a respirator, and that's fine. I have, you go to Walmart and I get one of those white little masks that go over my face. It's more of a dust collector than anything else. Is that appropriate? Most likely not. If it's on a material safety data sheet, a dust respirator is not going to work. Fumes and volatiles, will go, penetrate those. And you have to have special canisters that actually will neutralize or take out those particles. But again, without having a material safety data sheet and asking the question or reading it, you're not going to know that. A lot of times you'll end up getting, what I find is that people will get, they'll say it's a strong, it smells different. There's a strong odor, or whatever it might be. I get a sensation in my hands or whatever. You might have a chemical that's absorbed in the skin and a kind of a degreaser or something of that nature. And it actually, that kind of stuff will feel cool because it evaporates quickly. Then you start to say, well, where's my material safety data sheet? What should I be doing? Is that going to harm me in some way? At that point in time, the answer is probably not right then and there. But there's an acute effect and there's a chronic effect. If you do that every day through a career, can that make a difference? Sure, possibly can. And all of that stuff is information, again, that you're going to find on the material safety data sheet. Okay? They should be, they're part of the written program. They should be maintained in some reasonable order, alphabetically, numbered, whatever you want to call it, however you'd like to do it. But they have to be made available and they have to be there for you whenever you ask for them. Okay? Of all the parts of this program, the written program, the labels are important. You can't be out there with a container that you don't know what's in there. And the material safety data sheets, those are the two most important components of this program. Okay. Material safety data sheets, what they'll provide you with: the identity, physical hazards, health hazards, routes of entry. Is it an inhalant, a respiratory problem? Is it absorbing the skin? Is it only an ingestion issue? Permissible exposure limits. This starts to get into some real technical criteria, limits and studies that say, if you're exposed to a type of chemical, a PEL is a limit that will say, well, out of all the studies we've done, you can be exposed up to this level and it's safe. But if you go to this level, now you're really going to start to have problems. And it might be an acute or it might be a chronic effect. But it's a study done by industrial hygienists on the effects and the problems you have with chemicals. Safe handling practices, what should I wear, my PPE, control measures, emergency first aid. One of the things out of all the material safety data sheets, the most often when they're called upon is when there's a problem. One of my prior employers, I was in a hotel real estate development, hotels, pools, chlorine, maintaining the pools and things of that nature, housekeeping. And there's always a situation in those types of environments where everyone thinks that 2 chemicals is better than 1 chemical. I'm going to put in Ajax, and I'm also going to put in chlorine. Because, of course, it's twice the power. And what happens is those 2 things will then create a problem. You're going to create fumes. We've had many cases where housekeepers are overcome. You can't find them, and they're actually literally passed out. They were overcome so quickly while they're doing their job and cleaning. They're trying to do their job well. They're trying to get the job done quicker. But those things don't work. 2 does not necessarily mean it's going to be that much better. And usually it isn't. Material safety data sheets are called upon at that point in time. How do I know what it was? You look around and you see the chemicals that they were working with. What do I need to do? How do I take care of that person? Whenever you call the ambulance, they'll probably ask you, what's your material safety data sheet? What were they using? If you have that handy, that can speed up the process of them actually being able to respond appropriately in a quicker fashion to help save that person. In contact information, there's actually information on that material safety data sheet that will tell you who at the company or their resources for to get further information about that chemical if necessary. Physical hazards, again, common types of fire explosion or reactivity. Other health hazard issues. When we say health hazard, if it gets splashed in my eye, it might get, if it's an acid, what do? I rinse it out. Things of that nature. There's all different types of issues and problems with chemicals. Okay, corrosives. If you have an acid, I don't know if anybody's had the the fun opportunity of getting that kind of stuff stuck in their eye, but it's not. That's why you have eye wash stations. It can cause long-term lasting damage to your vision. Primary irritants, sanitizers, sensitizers, acutely toxic materials, carcinogens, cancer-causing, and there might be items out there that are organ-specific. You touch it, doesn't hurt your hand, but by the time it gets in your body, it could be a liver. It could focus on the liver or the lungs, things of that nature. Two areas that we look at for exposure. Acute, you might have this one, it's a one-time deal. It's a one-time activity, and you're exposed to it only one time at the end of the day, and it's say it's a vapor or volatile. You might get respiratory irritation. That's an acute effect. It happens at the moment. Okay, and you can most of the times those types of issues, you leave the environment, you feel better. Chronic health issues, these are things that are kind of silent. It's that every day. You're going to deal with it in small quantities, small doses. You may not even know that there's an exposure going on, and then, in 20 years from now, you find out this particular cleaner, solvent, had toluene, benzene, all these trichloro, numbered something, chemicals that over time, in small doses, collectively add up to a significant exposure. And it could be a carcinogen. Carcinogens are probably the most known types of issues. You end up, exposures to long-term, electricity, magnetism, and all that kind of stuff. That would be things that you might see in the news. But that's a chronic health hazard. Okay. Lots of exposure, inhalation, skin absorption, and ingestion. Things that we take for granted. You're out there cleaning or working on a project, and you take a break. You go and you get a donut, you get a snack, you have whatever it might be, and you don't wash your hands or clean your hands. There's ingestion. Like, people don't go out and literally want to eat these chemicals, but they get stuck on, and you'll end up finding them throughout the workplace because people are careless. They don't think about that chain reaction effect. Okay, so it does happen. Skin absorption is literally through the skin. If you don't have the proper gloves, you might get splashed in the face, arms. Inhalation, dust fumes, oils, mists, vapors. Control methods for these. If you have a really serious situation, you try to get chemicals that aren't hazardous. That's the ideal situation. And literally over the years, companies specialize in trying to bring those types of chemicals into the workplace, and that's their forte. They work with maintenance departments, and they work with food service departments, and the idea is to get something that is literally non-toxic. Okay, so ideally that's kind of like the number one way to avoid the need to have a material safety data sheet or to have something that's considered hazardous. Engineering controls. If a product is, you can't find a substitute, engineering controls would be, how do I literally block this exposure off physically from an employee, who might be the operator or has to use it. So you literally are confining the exposure or the hazard. The hazard's always there. You're just literally keeping people away from it. Okay, and as you go on, say each one of these. The problem is these items here. You can kind of hope, if it's working properly, that the exposure won't occur. Hazards are always still there, but they're under control. Now, in many situations, these can't be done. So you have to go into additional types of safe behavior, safe work practices. Limit the amount of time the employee is exposed to it. Might be one. Literally writing down procedures to say, whenever you go to get this chemical, make sure you have proper personal protective equipment. Again, it's a It's a process, it's a policy, a procedure, but as we get into these other items, it becomes much more interactive with the employee, and the employee has to make decisions, and you have to rely on the employee to do it correctly. On these items, you don't. Okay, you've actually controlled it to the point where the person can't get exposed. So now once we start getting into the human element, people get lazy, people get tired, people aren't trained, people don't know. And now it leaves big gaps and holes for the potential for issues to happen in exposures. Okay, so that's why we rely on the training. You know, inform. Okay, so safe work practices, personal protective equipment, gloves, face shield, eye protection, training, communication, environmental monitoring. Literally, we actually have industrial hygienists come into the workplace and do air samples, and they'll actually draw air through a filter, which is then analyzed to determine what's collected on it, and that's supposed to simulate somebody breathing and those chemicals getting caught in the throat and the lungs. And personal monitoring, again, those two go hand in hand. You personally monitor the exposure. Okay. Training must be provided to all employees. And the biggest thing out of the training is, you know, going over all this information, saying this is there, and this is available, is the biggest message to get across is that just ask for it. Because every chemical is so different, so unique, and the information that's going to be provided on that material safety data sheet is so unique. You know, the only people that are really going to know what is on there is if you ask for it, and the employee who ends up reading it, and the supervisor. The supervisor should know the chemicals in the workplace. Okay, so ask for the information if you're unsure of what you're dealing with. Okay, so training all new employees whenever a new chemical is introduced, and a lot of times the hazard communication will say, well, training has to be annually. Actually, it's upon hire, and anytime there's a change in the work environment. And that change could be, I work in the food service and I'm moving to the maintenance. Now I'm a new employee in the maintenance department, and now I'm exposed to a totally different group of chemicals. So there's a new chance for exposure. Okay, it's new. So it's upon hire, and anytime there's a change in the workplace. And that change in the workplace can be employees moving from department to department. It could be an introduction of a new process into the work environment, which requires new chemicals to be brought into the work environment. And so anytime that you're transferred or department changes, those are going to trigger the need to do the training. And the training should be, whenever it gets beyond new hire, by the supervisor. The supervisor is the one who should know what is in their work environment and the safe practices that you need to deal with in every job. Okay? So, in summary, everyone has a right to know. Ask for the information. The training individually should be on a specific material safety data sheet. You know, and the training should be in general, such as what we're going over today, just so you know what has to be out there and what's available. But the training needs to be specific to the job, to the chemical, and how it's being used. And the material safety data sheet is going to guide you in that process. And basically, we're trying to make sure that you ensures that we have material safety data sheets, that you have the proper personal protective equipment, and to ask questions. And that is, again, the most important aspect to this program is to ask. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Has anybody ever seen a material safety data sheet? Yep. Okay. Good. Do we know where they are? Do we have a centralized place where material safety data sheets are? Are they for every school? You should have them. Like they have to be readily available. So you can't have material safety data sheets at the high school and expect all the other schools to access them. You know, you should have material safety data sheets at the specific locations. Does everybody agree with that? I mean, is that where you have a question?
Yes, I have actually one question for two different things. Our safety data sheet from the district's a freaking book. And what I have from the cafeteria is just specific
Yeah.
for us.
That's right.
Now, the custodians are working in our work area using their chemicals. Do
Right.
I need to have that for my staff, even though they're not really using it, but they are exposed to it?
Well, you have to determine if they are, what the exposure is, okay, as the supervisor. And if there's a potential, yeah, I would say that you should do that. You should know that it's there anyway.
Then how about outside companies that come in? We have people that clean our hoods and
Yeah.
do different things. So I need to have the chemicals they're using and their MSDA sheets on
You
top.
need to verify that they.
And who's going to come in and check me for this, and what kind of trouble will I get in?
Well, in those areas, like it's going to be probably the health department, I would imagine.
Oh,
They don't care. But like I said, this is not. School districts are they're different. I mean, these are best practices. This is what general industry runs by, and we take them as the standard. And you want to follow those. Now, is an ocean inspector going to come knock on your door? No, because you're not under their jurisdiction. It's for schools. It's going to be some. It's going to be some state controls. Are they going to get as specific as this? No. But they're not going to say you need to maintain the records for 30 years. But should you? Well, OSHA says you should. So as far as contractors coming onto the premises, you should verify that they, in fact, have a hazard communication program for their employees, and that they have this information just in the event you need it. I mean, that's a standard practice to ensure the readily available of information in the event of an emergency. They're not going to probably have it in their back pocket or even on their truck, but you know that it's at their home office and available. Okay, those are good questions. Now, in between, like, as long as you know that interdepartmental interactions, maintenance is working in the cafeteria or whatever. As long as you know that the program and the materials are there and the material safety data sheets are there, that's fine. But then, depending upon what they're doing, you need to evaluate the situation to say, well, you need to inform this employee that there's potential kind of collateral potential as a result of them doing this job with this chemical. So first of all, stay away. The biggest thing is avoid. At that point in time, avoid the situation as much as possible. There's other programs we get involved in there, and it's called like authorized employees, and then those who are simply innocent bystanders who kind of are just in the area. Now, authorized employees need to have the specific training. Now, those who are kind of the collateral damage type of individuals working on the side, they should be informed that something is going on and to avoid it. But sometimes there could be an accident that results in an exposure. Okay, so they're informed to some degree now, and that's the biggest part, is they're informed of something that's going on, that the potential is there. Accident happens, and they don't really realize that there's a problem. Are they going to react appropriately? Probably not. They're going to let it roll off their back and just continue to work as normal. So constantly informing, maintaining that communication is the most important part. Okay? Any questions? Has anybody ever sat down with a supervisor and reviewed a material safety data sheet? Have supervisors done that with their employees? Okay. And that's normal. It is normal. A lot of times people don't really realize this stuff is out there. I would say the two biggest things are, number one, ask, and the second thing is to go back out and do a survey of your work environment. If you have any containers out there that aren't labeled, get rid of them. Avoid the process of transferring product or chemicals from a main source to a daily use if you can. And if you can't, then label them. Actually get a Sharpie and write on there, this is the chemical, this is the product, and this is the hazard. And use it for that, and that's it. Because if you end up having a container that's used in that manner, not labeled, you use it, you put in a chemical, that it's empty now, someone else is going to perhaps pick that up, put another chemical in that might not be compatible with what the residue is that's in that was used before. So, it can definitely lead to problems in the work environment down the road. And, and it happens unknowingly. Okay, so kind of clean up the workplace, get rid of those temporary containers, and just remember to ask that the material safety data sheets are there, and they're available for you. Okay? If there's no other questions, there's a sign-in sheet. If you hadn't signed in, there's 2 handouts. Oh, one last thing here is the exceptions. I'm sorry. And this isn't on a slide, but everyone should have this handout. And again, the exceptions to the chemicals that are required to have a material safety data sheet are pesticides. This is a special high toxic, this TSCA. It's a Toxic Substances Control Act. And this is like for highly toxic items that you're probably not going to find in a work environment. Okay, there's special information available for those. Food additives, veterinary devices, distilled spirits for non-industrial use, consumer products, agriculture and vegetables, seed. So the biggest thing that we see here is consumer items. Things that you can say, well, I can go to Walmart, I can go to the buy low, and I can buy this, I can buy Drano, I can buy cleaners, I can buy solvents. Is it covered under the realm of the hazard communication program? If it's used in quantities that are not typical of household use. That's what it comes down to. So more than likely, if you're utilizing it in the work environment, you're probably using it more than you would in your normal household. So I would say it would be covered. And literally, you would have to have the material safety data sheet. And you're probably buying that stuff in bulk anyway. You're probably not going to a buy low to buy something. And if you do, it's probably for a one-time use anyway. And then I would say that's household use. Okay?
This might be a stupid question, but what about our detergent that we use to wash up towels in the cafeteria?
Yeah, you would have material safety data sheets for that. Yeah. You should have those. Yeah, because that's you're doing much more laundry than normal. Household usage type of. And again, I'm sure you have a supplier who handles that. You put like a Johnstown Chemical or whoever the vendor is, they'll have all that information available. And if they didn't, they'd be out of business. They have. It's mandatory that they provide that, and that they gather that from their manufacturers they represent. But those are things that's a great example because you take it as, well, it's just detergent. You deal with this stuff every day. But it can be, it can be different. Any other questions?